Welcome back to Pitso here on SABC Lehae. Let us continue. Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, stated that the Competition Commission said implicated banks in the alleged rand manipulation have generated about R1 trillion a day between 2007 and 2013.
This is a demonstration that business has been active in wanting to destroy South Africa. Because when you manipulate the rand, you want the economy of the country to collapse, and that those businesses were not run by patriots. And it continues, and it's not unique to that period. There are things that business is doing now to undermine the economy and the standing of this country. And we're not saying there are no patriotic business people who are working with government to build and rebuild this country and the economy better. But what has been happening, specific to the rand manipulation, the Competition Commission has been engaging, because if you are following up, is it 28 banks and financial institutions that are at play, you need to have a solid case. So you need to then incentivize some to come and become state witnesses so that you can have evidence to prosecute the others. And the pace at which, if you recall, this was 2015. The time is taking, it shows the matter is complex. And they say they are confident now that they can take the matter to prosecution so that they can hold those who have not come forward to account and continue to deal with the penalties of the others.
To hear more about this matter, we are now joined by Professor Hlengani Mathebula, business expert from Turfloop Graduate School of Leadership. Professor, welcome to our show here on Pitso SABC Lehae. Before we go deeper into this matter, let's start from the beginning. We've heard about rand manipulation from the radio, on TV, and we've read about it. But what is it? What is rand manipulation? And perhaps how does it affect the economy?
Well, I think what we need to be able to understand is we need to deal with the issues around the rand manipulation in a manner that suggests that we are able to understand how the rand performs against other currencies. And you need to then understand that the rand is amongst one of the basket of currencies in the world that are well ranked and well respected. So the rand is a currency that we rely on to trade against the dollar or the euro or the pound. But in this instance, it will have to be an issue around an import and export a payment. So if you are able to devalue the rand or overvalue the rand at one particular point, it will mean that it will impact on the prices on an individual on the street in terms of how much the rand in your pocket is worth or what sort of goods you can be able to buy vis-a-vis the exchange rate in which you are buying from the other currencies.
Professor, can you please tell us more about the R1 trillion a day that the Competition Commission said the banks made?
Look, I mean, that is a figure that the Competition Commission has determined. So as you would have heard the minister saying that having to investigate this matter is a very complex one. It has taken about 7 years to reach to this point where you have had one bank coming up and saying, well, we admit complicity. We'll want to pay a fine. We'll want to turn a state witness. If it was a simple matter, we would simply have been able to go in and prosecute the others that are involved. So now you have to then find witnesses to be able to get into this space, to then be able to have the facts and evidence that you can then rely on to prosecute those who are not going to be able to come to the party. But what I think is important is to realize the fragility of the banking system in a time when everybody can just be weighing down on them. I would rather have a scenario where the Competition Commission complete its processes, is able to go take this matter to court, find the culprits, let the normal course of the law take its course, and then all of us are then guided in the manner that we have been guided currently. If we have waited for 7 years, I'm sure we can wait some more to ensure that we have a process that is fully proved, that we're not speculating about what these banks are doing, because I fear that if we do any other thing and if we get too excited about what we have been able to read in this report currently without the finer details, we run a risk of weakening the banking system. And a weaker banking system than it currently is, which is ranked amongst the best in the world, if it becomes weaker, our economy will even be more affected in a worse and a weakened banking system.
Professor Mathebula, in your own view, do you think the 42 million rand that the Standard Chartered Bank paid as a fine was sufficient?
Well, the issue around sufficiency is relative. Relative to, I think it's about $2.7 million. It's relative. And I say relative because what could they have done if they didn't come on board and confess to their sins? You will have not been the wiser. The Competition Commission will have nothing to go on. They have taken 7 years to reach to this point, and they are reaching to this point because one bank has come up and said, well, we want to admit, we want to pay the 43 million rand, and we want to assist you to be able to out the other people that may have been involved in this process. I would rather we have that than sit in the dark. If you just want to react as a normal person in the street, you could be saying, no, man, you have made so much money, prosecute these people, take all the people that were involved into jail, and then what? What happens to the other 27 banks that have not come to the fore? Maybe through this 43 million rand that we are charging this particular bank, we may then get more banks coming up and confessing their own role in the space. And once that happens, it will allow the regulatory bodies to then strengthen their environment to ensure that the things that have happened now don't happen again. Because our end goal should be to ensure that we do not repeat this current state that we have found ourselves, that we have set for 8 years investigating this matter.
Professor, what are some of the security measures, if any, does the Reserve Bank have in protection of the rand against this manipulation?
Look, the Reserve Bank is charged by the Constitution to protect the rand. And the Reserve Bank has a surveillance department, or the foreign exchange department in the previous naming convention. And I do know that that particular department is very efficient, and as the entire Reserve Bank is, in the work that it does with the banks on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minute-by-minute basis. But, you know, we might be tempted to want to criticize the Reserve Bank that they may have not done enough, they may not have seen things that we want to see. The reality is that if people have ill intent, they will always find loopholes to do things that they need to do. And I think that where we are now, where we have some that are coming up front to say, listen, we have participated in these illegal activities, we're prepared to be able to come front, we're prepared to be state witnesses. That way, the Reserve Bank and other regulatory bodies will then be able to strengthen their processes to ensure that this never happens again. But ultimately, that we have a much more stronger financial system that can withstand any of these manipulations that we're talking about today.
So what does this rand manipulation issue, what image does it create to international investors or foreign investors?
Look, I mean, it's quite easy for anyone to want to say it's a South African phenomenon. It's actually not. This very investigation by the Competition Commission was in itself triggered by the fact that the UK and some banks in the US already there were investigations. In any event, that means that this did not only happen by South African banks alone, but it has happened across jurisdictions. So we shouldn't look at it as if it is something that has been unique to South Africa. It's something that happens all over the world. and people take their chances. To the extent that we've been able to catch them out, that is a positive aspect that we must be able to look at, and we must then be able to strengthen those areas.
Professor Hlengani Mathebula, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. That was Professor Hlengani Mathebula talking to us about the issue of rent manipulation. Let us now continue with Pitso. Welcome back to Pitso here on SABC Lehae. The search and recovery operation for 2 people reported missing after being swept away along Klip Rivier in Olifantsvlei, south of Johannesburg, is still going. The 21-year-old male and an 18-year-old female were washed away during a cleansing ritual on Saturday night. To speak more on this story, we have Dr. SBSG for Traditional Healers in Gauteng Province and Professor David Luka Musoma, the chairperson of the CRL Rice Commission. Gentlemen, can you hear me? We're going to start with Dr. SB. Is it a must to do a cleansing ritual at the river?
Good morning. Good morning to you and your viewers, first of all. To answer your question, I can't say it is a must. I would have to understand the merit of the case for the client or the patient in particular before we can say something is a must. But as far as I know, we do have these rituals from time to time that are done somewhere in the veld, others are done at the rivers.
So, Dr. SB, do traditional healers first check how deep the river is before such rituals take place, or in order for them to check if it's safe to conduct such a ritual?
The norm in the practice is that any practitioner who takes a patient or a client to any place, that particular practitioner has a responsibility of ensuring the safety of that client or those clients.
So in a situation like this, as traditional healers, where you find an incident like this happening while conducting a ritual, what do you do then?
Come again, the last part?
I was saying, in a situation like this, as traditional healers, where you find an incident like this happening while conducting a ritual, what do you do?
I need to be very honest with you. There isn't much we can do unless we go and we investigate what actually transpired, what led up to this accident, what led up to people drowning at a particular river. Like I've said before, there is no practitioner that can just go to any river and not go in first and assure the patient that the place is safe. So for me, it is quite difficult to sit here and say, we are going to do X, Y, and Z. We first need to determine what the merit of the story or the entire case is. And most certainly, we are entitled as a formation representing traditional healers to take action against such practitioners. You know, I mean, there are legal institutions. We can go to the SAPS. And as a sector, we do have the right to open up a case should we find that there has been negligence.
Perhaps you can just share some of the precautions that, one needs, as traditional healers, you have to take into account before, conducting such a ritual. What are some of the precautions that traditional healers have to adhere to ensure that such incidents don't happen in future?
I'm gonna repeat myself. You're asking me the same question in a different format. All practitioners going to the veld, going to the rivers, caves, etc., we have a responsibility of ensuring that we do not take our clients to places that are not safe. In other words, you then have a responsibility of ensuring that wherever you're taking your client for whatever reason, be it a ritual, whatever it is you intend doing, you have a responsibility of ensuring that there is safety.
All right, now we're going to move to the CRL Commission. Looking at the incident that happened, 2 people have been swept away during a cleansing at the river. What is your take on that?
Let me start off by saying, in concurring with Dr. SB, is that there is nothing wrong with cleansing rituals. There's nothing wrong. It's part and parcel of a belief system. As long as it does not lead to death or human sacrifice. That's the line no one is allowed to cross by the act or whatever the case may be. So we need to make sure that we underscore that the rituals can be conducted. But what we are really concerned about is the resultant deaths in the people who are being assisted. Now, if the desire of the traditional healer or a pastor is really to cleanse and to provide healing and restoration of the individual, a safer and conducive space must be found to do this. I think we concur there, because it will obviate against the deaths of people who come under our care. Second, if the purpose of cleansing is about healing, if an individual dies, that objective is no longer achieved. You have missed it. So it is important to make sure that the objective that is set at the beginning is achieved at the end, which is why we are encouraging that traditional healers, pastors, whoever does the rituals, must do so under safe environment. And let me move on to the freedom of religion, freedom of culture, freedom of language, and things like that. This freedom is in 2 parts. Freedom against, in other words, freedom against restrictions of cultural rituals, cultural activities, religion, even language. But there's a second important thing. Freedom for the promotion of the good of our people and the dignity of our people. That's the freedom that we have. So the religion, culture, there is nothing wrong with it. It is the people who practice who are not really paying attention to the sanctity and the protection of the human life. That's why this is the key for us. And we need to make sure that leaders, by virtue of being leaders, must be held to account for these activities. As Dr. SB said, it is the responsibility of the traditional healer to make sure that individuals are taken to a safe environment.
So, Professor, we understand that as a commission, you also, you believe that such rituals are sacred and should be treated as such. But would you say it's advisable to also maybe have the South African Police Service in the presence of those that are doing such rituals in that rivers to ensure that there is safety?
Before I make any prescription, it is important that the CRL meets all the traditional healers who do rituals, cleansing rituals, to come together, sit down, and come up with a strategy how best to mitigate the protection of the people under their care. So I would make sure that first we meet, we talk, what would be the place of the SAPS in that environment. First, the leaders themselves must find a safer place. No SAPS can do that for them. They must find a safer place. And they must understand that when the people come back alive, it's a plus for them. For the rituals they do, it's a plus for them. But if they die, there's no plus. It's a minus. So this is about really about education. It's about engagement. It's about awareness. It's not about condemnation. It's making sure we do things right for the sake of our people.
So does the government have any rights to make or to maybe stop rituals like this that happen in rivers, looking at the security of people?
You can't stop a ritual. That's why I say the first precondition is for us to talk about this. Remember, rituals have got a history from the perspective culturally and otherwise. It's got a history. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, stop it. There must be an engagement, come to some understanding, and agree that the safety of our people is a priority number one. And what do we do to make sure that this happens? And through that education, you may find that in the next year or so, there's nothing happening because people have now taken full responsibility for the role they play as leaders in this regard.
So the CRL Rights Commission is set out to build the nation by providing space for each of the cultural, religious and linguistic communities and to promote unity amongst diverse communities. What advice can you give to those traditional healers that are conducting these rituals or still going to conduct these rituals of this kind?
First, unity cannot happen when people die. Unity happens to the living. And when the traditional healers succeed in healing and giving hope to our people, that is the beginning of unity. People will give respect, will give accommodation to the practice, to this cultural practice. So it is important that issues of tolerance is very important, listening, making sure that they are judicious, making judgment in terms of what we do, and the end of which is the goodness and the protection of our people. And that is how we can build a unity and building a society that's cohesive. When everybody is protected, everybody's right is given due respect.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to Dr. SB. Dr. SB, you've heard what Professor Musoma was mainly highlighting, that safety should be a priority should be a main priority when conducting these rituals. So as an organization, the Traditional Healers Association in Gauteng, do you think you are doing enough to sort of educate traditional healers on ensuring that before such rituals happen, there are safety measures that are being looked at?
Yes, thank you. I just want to correct something in your statement. We are not an organization. I do not represent an organization. I represent a directorate. I represent African Traditional Medicines Directorate, which means that organizations such as Traditional Healers Organization are then, covered by us. But anyways, getting to your question, yes, we are doing enough. We are most certainly doing enough. I think we have to put it very clear out there to the public that as leaders of the sector, we hold enough training sessions, we hold enough conferences, we have enough meetings, and we do advise our practitioners in the sector that these are the precautionary measures that they need to take, these are the responsibilities that they have, and they obviously are responsible for people's lives, and therefore they need to understand their capacity, and the seriousness of what they're doing. So I don't think in this instance that at any level we can now take the finger and point it to anybody else. It is either a matter of the practitioner not having taken care and ensuring that the place that he or she was going to use was safe enough. The other thing as well that I want to mention is the issue of time. When people go to rivers in the evening, when it is dark already, we do not understand or know what their reasons are. But either or, that person or those individuals will forever remain accountable to whatever happens to the client. And for me, that is the bottom line. So in a nutshell, yes, we as the leadership of the sector, we are doing enough. And it is up to the people out there who are doing executing their practice and healing to then take the rest of the responsibility.
Dr. SB and Professor Musoma, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.